right, folks, this will be technically, I guess, the third time that I'm trying to shoot an update video for the election and for a lot of other miscellaneous topics. You obviously have, if you're a subscriber, you've been noticing that there's fewer videos. I think for the time being, I'm going to try to do maybe 2 videos a week. This week I might do more simply because I have 2 book reviews that I want to do, and they're pretty good books. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about what's happened since Bernie Sanders had his heart attack or incident, whatever people want to call it, and also the Biden-Ukraine cloud. So, starting over here, I would say that this signals, along with the Real Clear Politics aggregate, which is getting thinner and thinner every time I look at it. It signals that the Biden campaign is actually over. It's just that it's not officially over. What we are seeing right now, if you're looking at polling or if you're looking at any data or any media coverage, is the residual last gasp of Joe Biden as front-running presidential candidate, and within 4 or 5 days, I expect that he'll, first of all, be completely taken over by Elizabeth Warren, possibly collapsing even further, and he'll probably end up just crashing along the banks and possibly even not going further. So this, of course, is more about this ridiculous Cory Booker statement. If you come after Joe Biden, you're going to have to deal with me. Well, that's very intimidating, Cory, seeing as who cares? But the strategy behind it is very, very simple and not that difficult to understand if you're coming from Cory Booker's standpoint. There is now going to be a mad rush after the supposed bounty of Joe Biden voters that are going to be leaving his sinking ship. And Booker says, appearing on CNN's Newsroom with Ana Cabrera, Senator Cory Booker issued the ultimate warning to Donald Trump and presumably anyone else who would dare to mess with his rival for Democratic nomination, Joe Biden. If you come after Joe Biden, the senator, sometimes known as Spartacus, threatened, you're going to have to deal with me in this case. Before we get to the rest of the interview, let's back that up a moment. When I said that Biden and Booker are rivals for the Democratic presidential nomination, it's a bit like saying to my 9-year-old and I are rivals for a starting offensive position with the Denver Broncos. Given the team's 1-4 start, it isn't impossible that they'd choose one of us, although it remains somewhat unlikely. Similarly, neither Booker nor Biden looks exactly like a shoo-in for the Dem Nom. Booker's situation is so desperate that he was forced into a cheesy fundraising gimmick last month in which he threatened that he'd have to wind down his campaign if he didn't raise $1.7 million by October 1st. Not only did it work, but Booker is polling so strongly that he's qualified for the November debate stage. Strongly meaning 3% in his best polls. That's a 3 followed by a nothing. On the fundraising totals for last quarter, Mayor Pete pulled in 3 times more money than Booker did, and even that's only good enough for third place. Kamala Harris continues to struggle, but still generated almost twice as many dollars as Booker did. Meanwhile, Biden's Joe-mentum is all going in the wrong direction. Biden is sinking fast in RCP's Iowa average down to 20.3% from a high of 28.5% just 3 weeks ago. He's now in second place there behind Liz Warren. So that's something I'm going to look at in a minute. Skipping over all that, speaking about the Biden's involvement in Ukraine, he told Cabrera, there are baseless, unfounded, scurrilous lies. These are baseless, unfounded, scurrilous lies, plain and simple, trying to undermine the character of one of the statesmen of our country, not our party, but our country. And so, yeah, you've got a problem with me. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really seem like Biden needs a junior senator of no particular accomplishments to come to his defense. Also, Booker is getting needlessly distracted here. Booker's focus shouldn't be other people's problems with him. It ought to be on his problem attracting Democratic primary voters. Iowa's 41 delegates are up for grabs in just under 4 months, and Booker is polling at under 2.5% there. Maybe he needs to spend a little less time making big talk on CNN and a little more time making small talk in the heartland. So that's a great point here. A lot of these people are going on TV and trying to make some sort of spectacle about how, well, we're all for one and one for all and whatever. And the reality is that in the past few months, Joe Biden was actually called a racist, essentially a racist, by Kamala Harris, without calling him a racist, because of his past support for force busing. I think Cory Booker, it's all blurred together, but I think he might have also been in on that. He was also just destroyed by Julian Castro in the past debate, being made fun of for having a lax memory. And Kirsten Gillibrand also attacked him for being sexist. So suddenly it's wrong for you to criticize a major presidential candidate, the former vice president, for real issues of cronyism and corruption and use of his position in order to enrich his son. That's wrong to do that, right? Think about it. It's wrong to criticize a major political candidate for something that is actually relevant to his position. But you can still dig up things that he said or supported back in the 70s and 80s in order to paint him as this awful human being. That's the rules that the Democratic Party are imposing. So that's it for Biden specifically. Now you will see if you're looking at this. Now I did shoot a video a couple of days ago that was on this topic, and it's since gotten even more close. And it's not quite the way that I think it's said in the PJ Media article that we just read, where they said that Biden is down to 20.3% in the aggregate. But in the latest poll, he's down to 26, and Warren is up to 27. In the Economist poll from a few days earlier, Biden is down to 22, and Warren is leading him at 28%. In the Monmouth poll, it's 28 to 25. So there's a very clear trajectory where Biden seems to be just falling out of the sky, and Elizabeth Warren is now in the aggregate. Now remember, the aggregate is updating day by day. So this is an aggregate of several days worth of polling going back to I guess September 29th. And Biden is at only 0.3%. So he's within a percentage point lead of Elizabeth Warren. And all the latest polls are showing Warren with at least a percentage point lead over Joe Biden. So I fully expect there to be, within the next 4 to 5 days, this update where we will see Biden actually sink below Warren. And once he's fallen out of the leading poll position, he is going to continue to sink much, much faster. There's no way to recover. First of all, what would trigger Joe Biden to recover the lead position? The only possible thing would be some sort of drastic fall for Elizabeth Warren, something crazy. Now, she was caught, I believe, this week telling some sort of lie about how she was apparently fired or let go after getting pregnant. I don't think that that's really going to affect her position in the polls, especially not the Democratic polls. And then you see some of these other candidates. We'll just walk through some of them. Bernie Sanders is sinking. I don't think that he's really going to have an easy time recovering right now, given the heart situation, which we'll get to in a second. Buttigieg is still holding at a very stable 6%, but it's not really. I mean, look, yes, it's good that Pete Buttigieg is staying in the race for him. It's not really going to help him in the long run. I think that we're going to see a lot of these candidates trying to grab Joe Biden voters. I think the lion's share of those voters are going to go to Elizabeth Warren. And then the remainder will probably be divided among a few other candidates. Buttigieg might grab some of them, but I don't think it's really going to make a difference. And then in terms of Bernie Sanders voters, if he continues to lose strength, I don't see them going to Buttigieg or to Harris or to Beto or to Cory Booker or to and maybe a few of them will go to Tulsi Gabbard, which I don't think will really make a difference. I think that the lion's share of Sanders voters that would vote for someone else will go to Elizabeth Warren. Maybe some of them will go to Yang and Gabbard, but it's not going to really make a big difference for them because they're still way down behind Elizabeth Warren. So any gains that she makes are going to probably come at the expense of both Biden and Sanders, meaning that she's basically rising to the top and they're fading away and leaving her as the clear runaway for the nomination, which is bad news for the Democratic Party. There was even an article that came out today on MarketWatch that was talking about how Elizabeth Warren winning the nomination or being in the lead for the nomination will probably hit the stock market pretty hard, and that's not good news. Despite people who say, well, the stock market isn't the real America. Well, they're much more real than the America that Elizabeth Warren represents, which are cloistered law professors who make a living off of tenured positions and charge their students tuition up the ass and have them buy textbooks that are way overpriced. That's the America she represents. Okay, let's not beat around the bush about that. Then we're gonna talk a little bit about Sanders' heart attack. I think that it might be a little facetious of me to make any light of someone else's health, so I'm not going to do that. I think obviously it's I don't like Bernie Sanders, and I really do feel it on a personal level. I don't like him. I think it's first of all the way that he did not defend his own supporters when many of them were accused of being Russian trolls. And this is a story that I was working on for the better part of a year. And, Bernie Sanders, as far as he's concerned, it's all about preserving his standing within the left and the Democratic establishment. It's not about challenging the evil media that is trying to motivate our country into a confrontation with Russia and into confrontations with other countries. We're seeing right now it's a horrible situation, the conflict going on in Syria. I feel for the Kurds and whatever. But if people are saying honestly that they believe that they would send troops into a war zone in order to defend Syria from the Turks or part of Syria from the Turks, I think it's really, you're being very scumbaggy. Most people would not send their own children. Most people would not sign up to go to that war. Some people would. I think that's different. But in any case, Bernie Sanders, there was, I believe, some lack of clarity last week regarding whether he had just a minor heart ailment or whether he had a heart attack. Most of the sources I'm seeing now do say that he did have a heart attack. It said Bernie Sanders has been sidelined for nearly a week after failing for almost 3 days to disclose that he had a heart attack. And that sequence of events unfolded as he's been eclipsed in the polls by the other progressive icon in the race, Elizabeth Warren. So it's not just that he's been eclipsed. She's now leading both him and all the other progressives by a wide margin, and she's now almost in pole position. And once she takes that pole position, all the Hillary bots, all of the Biden idiots who are not, to be honest with you, I don't know who is planning to vote for Biden anyway. I always thought he was a paper candidate. You can go back to when he started running. All of those people are going to flow to Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders is going to have to make that up. Now Sanders and his campaign are laboring to contain the cloud of uncertainty that's formed over his candidacy. According to interviews with Sanders' aides and surrogates, they're betting that his performance at next week's debate and on the campaign trail will show he still has the stamina to run for and serve as president. Sanders staffers also plan to emphasize how his health scare demonstrates the need for Medicare for all. That's one of the most ridiculous statements I've ever seen. Bernie Sanders has never been in need of Medicare of any type. He was not old enough to need Medicare when he was just the mayor of Burlington, and he's always received effectively state employee health care or whatever setup they have if you're an elected official. He's had it as mayor of Burlington. He had it as a congressman for Vermont. He's had it as a senator for Vermont. He's had his entire life better health care than any other American by far. I think some Cadillac plans might be better, and Cadillac plans are essentially the type of union plans that his healthcare proposal would destroy. So no, Bernie Sanders is a piece of crap, and his Bent Medicare for All pitch is ridiculous because you can't just mandate that the same quality be applied for everyone and then expect the quality to remain the same as it was when people paid different tiers. People pay different tiers, and that's the way that some people do receive better health care and some people don't. It's a sad reality, but that's the way it is. When you impose some sort of rule that everyone receives literally the same care, then there has to be some sort of redistribution of resources, okay? And then generally the care is not at the same higher level that it might have been before. It doesn't really go up. Throughout the Democratic Party, however, insiders and strategists are openly questioning the effect of his heart attack would have on his bid for the White House and on the primary as a whole. Sanders' team is also coming under fire from some journalists and Democrats for not announcing earlier that he suffered a heart attack. His aides have declined to allow reporters to interview Sanders' doctors. It's one of those things where the cover-up is worse than the crime, said Andres Ramirez, a Nevada-based Democratic strategist and former vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee's Hispanic Caucus. I don't think anybody would have cared if they had said he had a heart attack, got it a few days or later, and then everything's good. Instead, he said there seemed to be a refusal or hesitance to say Bernie Sanders had a heart attack. I think it's less of an issue about his age and more of an issue of, hey, Bernie, you're supposed to be the transparent candidate. In an all-staff conference call described to Politico by people who listened in, Sanders suggested on Monday that he would use his experience to pivot back to one of his campaign's central ideas. The same afternoon, he and his wife, Jane, also made a brief appearance, leaving his home in Vermont for what appeared to be a brisk walk. Yeah, they were trying to avoid the media. If there's anything that this event kind of tells us, is the importance of what our message in this campaign, and our message is us, not me. This has never been about me. Sanders told his team during the call, it's been about millions of people, including certainly our campaign staff, working together to bring about the kind of fundamental changes this nation absolutely needs. Sanders' aides are adamant they handled the health incident appropriately and have taken to social media to defend themselves against criticism, which has come from reporters such as NBC News correspondent Andrea Mitchell and Rolling Stone senior writer Jamil Smith. The aides said they were provided several updates on Sanders' recovery last week, released a statement from his doctors, and made his wife available for questions. Not one person with this hysterical take can articulate a legitimate risk that 3 days of privacy, followed by disclosure over a year before an election, were presented to the Republic. Brianna Joy Gray, Sanders' national press secretary, wrote on Twitter. Anyway, so I will include these links in the chat so you can read the rest of these articles. I think that generally, most people will take a look at this incident and it's not going to help Bernie Sanders, because really Bernie Sanders' appeal is, of course, his ideas and the forcefulness that he has with them. But when you have other candidates who are basically stealing a lot of his platform and marketing themselves as the new Bernie Sanders or the younger Bernie Sanders or the black Bernie Sanders or the Mexican Bernie Sanders, he does lose a lot of the thunder that he had from 2016. And it's clearly not the same vibe. The enthusiasm is still higher than most other candidates, but it's not as high as it was in 2016. In 2016, he was blowing out the crowds and he was pretty much charging through the Midwest and embarrassing Hillary Clinton. And this time, I do feel that it's going to be harder. He does have more volunteers on his side, but volunteers can't make up for this perception that your campaign is hounded by health problems. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also follow me on BitChute and on Minds.com. You can also donate to me on Subscribestar. All three of those are at Chef Leopard, and then on Gab at Starscream85. I'll talk to you later.
Inside my future eye, what I see just makes me cry.